haven't really got either.
I need to go through and clear out all my favorites and trusted devices and all that jazz.
Of course, we're not even late yet. It's not even 7:30. I don't know. I'm getting all carried away, but we're fine. We're fine.
Are we going to do one of the short shows tonight?
We need to, yes.
Okay.
Because we're running out of time. I don't think I'm going to whine about it. I mean, I'll whine about it because the YouTube is live. I don't think I'll do it on the recording, but we're supposed to close on my new house Tuesday.
Yeah.
Right.
And they called me at about 6 o'clock on Friday and said, nope, not going to be able to make that date.
What?
Yeah. The bank. Just, no, we're not ready. No explanation. No excuse. Just, no, we can't do that date. We'll let you know when we can.
That's crap.
Yeah. I kind of went off on the lady. And
well, yeah.
She was like, sir, you need to calm down. I said, I have a contract that says I will close on May 17th. Because of you, I am now in breach of contract. I think I'm remarkably calm considering how freaked out I am at this point.
Yeah, no kidding.
Just brr. Georgia has, I don't know if all states do, but Georgia has a what's called a unilateral right to extend. So either party for a number of reasons can just unilaterally say we're extending the closing date up to 8 days. And one of the reasons is because the bank can't get their stuff together. So that's actually what it says in the legal document. If your bank can't get their stuff together, you can unilaterally close.
Wow.
Actually, no, that's not true. But it was something like, financing unavailable or whatever. So the point is that I have options, and so we've just pushed the closing back, and I guess the bank knew that. That's why they didn't care. Whatever. We'll get to it when we get to it. I sent them the last of their paperwork 2 weeks ago. It's literally been sitting on somebody's desk or in an email queue for 2 weeks, and they just got to it Friday and said, "Oh, darn it, Tuesday's not good for me."
Mark, what would you rather do? Shoot around the golf with your buddies from other banks, or help your customers? You're going to make the money either way.
Right. So they don't have a choice in the matter. Right.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. We've got you by the short hairs. It doesn't matter how happy you are.
Yep.
Because if I went with another bank, it would, we'd be starting over 30 to 45 days. So.
Ouch.
In the Dallas area, there's like Rodney Anderson is like a mortgage company, and they say they can close. Their average closing is 11 days.
Wow.
That's impressive.
Yep.
I need to give them a call.
Let me see if I can find them here. Supreme Lending. .rodneyanderson.com.
I wonder if he works in Georgia.
I don't know. Give them a call. They open at, if I remember correctly, they open at 7:45 or Central Time. So that would be like 8:45 your time.
Yeah, Supreme Lending South, Atlanta, Georgia. So maybe it's the same company. I don't know. Anyway. I'm not going to panic at this point. I have a feeling, though, that the seller would probably just say, nah, we'll go somewhere else. Because, there were multiple offers on the house.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just grousing about it.
Well, yeah, but that's still pretty shitty.
It really is. It would be one thing if there was a reason for it. But the reason just was we don't have a slot available. That was the exact exact quote. We don't have a slot available on Monday. Well, it's not like you haven't known about this for 6 weeks. I mean, the first document I sent you 6 weeks ago had a big red closing date on it that said the 17th.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're just not ready. Sorry.
We don't have a slot available.
Yeah.
It sounds like they don't have enough personnel.
Or, Bob went on vacation, and Tim's not willing to cover for him. Okay, we should be live. Let's do a quick check.
Checking the microphone and funny words.
Talking now. Of course, it will sound great because we're not recording. Talking now. Of course, it will sound great. Not recording.
That sounded fine to me.
Of course, I told you it would.
He did say so.
That sounded fine to me. Of course, I told you it would.
Okay. We're live. We're ready to go. Let me alert the chat room. Hey, Chris, we're about ready to record. All right, I've alerted the chat room.
Okay, good.
I am
Glad to hear
recording
it.
locally. I did not forget.
I think I'm already recording, so you're gonna have a little bit to chop.
I always do. Okay. So, Chris, the topic of this show is losing American jobs to foreign technology people.
Mm-hmm.
Is there such a thing as an American job? That's the question.
It's a good question.
Yeah. It's a political season. People are making hay about that. Seth brought up some articles. There's really 4 articles all talking about the same thing, but it's just some grist for the mill there.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Make a marker and begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome to GeekRant, episode 237. Whose job is it anyway? Recorded May 15th, 2016, and brought to you by Element Opie Productions. ElementOpie.com. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the only show on the internet where geeks rant. That is GeekRant. My name is Mark, the Sultan of the Soapbox Cockerel, and joining me this week, as always, usually most of the time, are your 2 stalwart co-hosts, Chris, the Command Line Godfather Neves, and Seth, the Gooey Kid Anderson. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, everyone out there in internet land. It's been a pretty good week. You?
And welcome one, welcome all, welcome one and all. We're so glad you could join us today. I think I've used that one before. I'm sorry.
Seth is once again joining us from his Professor Xavier study.
I'm sitting on my broken chair and all. So
we're good to be back. And to answer your question, Chris, it was an okay week. Unfortunately, it starts all over again in just a few hours. That's how that works.
Yeah. It's kind of sad. It's just like watering your yard.
You
water it to cut it, and then you water it
right.
some more.
It's just like eating. You eat it to poop, and then anyway.
Ooh, that went down the wrong way.
I have a standard went down the wrong. I have a standard meeting on Fridays, every Friday, and somebody always comes in and says something like, "Oh, we finally made it. It's Friday. Can't wait for the weekend." And my standard response is, if you've been waiting 5 days a week for the 2 days a week, you're doing something wrong. Because you can't live your life waiting for 1/3 of it to happen, and the other 2/3 just suffering through.
It depends on what you do during that 1/3.
That's kind of true there.
No, I just it's. If you hate your job that much, find another job. There are other jobs. My job is not the favorite job I've ever had, but if it was to the point where every Friday I was like, I can't wait for 2 more to get away from this hellhole for 2 days, it would be time to find another job.
If you could find one.
Everybody can find another job. It may not be where you want to be, or it may not making what you want to make. In my experience, most people limit themselves because they want the perfect job within 30 minutes of where they were living right now.
Uh-huh.
And that's, there
They're
are no
entitled
good
to
jobs available. Sure there are. You just may have to move to find one.
Yeah. And I don't want to jump ahead to what we're going to be talking about, but I'm seeing people wanting level 2 candidates for $10 to $12 an hour for a level 2 technology position. Am I the only one who thinks that's a little low? But
it is what the market will bear, and that's what this show is about. It's an election year, in case you haven't noticed, here in the U.S. And so candidates are making hay about all manner of things. And one of the things that Seth brought to our attention a little while back, these articles are a little old, but still worthwhile, worth discussing. And political candidates are making hay about American jobs and laying people off and letting them dang foreigners come in on an H-1B visa or undocumented workers, and it used to just be that it was the Mexicans picking lettuce were doing the jobs that Americans didn't want to do, but now it's the Indians working tech support or the Chinese doing so. The argument is still the same. Them dang foreigners are putting Americans out of work, but who them foreigners are is changing. So that's what we'll be talking about here in a few minutes. But first, we need to hear Seth's promised spoiler-free review of the Civil War.
Ooh.
Okay, well, I went and saw it Monday, and I wasn't looking forward to it, but I've got to say I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think it is a comic book movie done right for these reasons. Number one, overly simplistic. Number two, plot holes that craters would be a more apt word for. Number three, revisionist history of what comes before, a climax about halfway through, and then setting up a next adventure at the end. It is a comic book in movie form.
That's a good point.
And it was very entertaining. It was very entertaining. The banter, which the interplay between the characters. Are we still going to be friends? It depends on how hard you hit me. Stuff like that was perfect. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. So, high quality, dramatic, put your thinking cap on. Nope, not even close. But it's a comic book in movie form. And in that sense, crossovers, things you didn't think were going to happen, but you knew from the previews. But it was maybe the best comic book movie I've seen. Not the best movie based on comic materials, but the best comic book movie I've seen.
Did you agree with my critique of the visuals as being rushed and not done well?
I noticed a little bit. I don't think it was near as bad as you had made it out to be.
Okay.
So,
I fully admit it could just be me. Could just be my observant eye. But I did, as articles are being written, whatever. I've learned that there are several sections, no spoilers, I promise. There are several sections of that movie that are entirely digital that I did not notice. So while the visual effect editors got certain things, like for example, the big climactic scene at the airport did not take place. There was no footage. There was no film shot at the airport. They went to an airport. They took lots of pictures, still pictures, and even to the point of LiDAR scanning, so they could get a full 3D map of it. And then they digitally recreated the whole thing. So that whole airport was not a real airport. I did not know that. However, when Captain America falls a great distance and bounces off a couple of things, it looks like a super high bounce ball. So they did some things super right and some things really badly. Also, Black Panther. Every scene of the movie completely digital. That there was no suit. There was no actor ever at any point playing Black Panther. I would not have known that.
Yeah. So I read an article where they were talking about the fight scene, and you have Hawkeye, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and the Black Widow are basically the only ones there, because most all of Scarlet Witch's stuff is kind of cuts away to her, so she could have been anywhere, but they're really the only ones. All the rest,
anybody wearing a mask is digital.
Yeah. So like I say, and and again, it's a comic book movie. You expect the non-true, the exaggerated physics. So like I say, best comic book movie I've seen.
When you put it in those terms, I'm willing to revise my review. I gave it a 7. It was okay. Not terrible. Not it's a C. It's passing. You're gonna get by. You'll make it to the 8th grade. But if you look at it from those terms as a comic book put on film, it's actually masterful. I hadn't considered it like that, but it's the good and the bad. All the cheese and poor writing and let's just not worry about that thing of comic books put on film. Okay, now I get it.
Cool.
I'll have to think that way when I see it.
And maybe the problem is they have played so many of the others so realistic, like starting all the way back with Iron Man in 2008, I believe it was. It was really gritty and realistic, and they really went for the as much as possible the real world. This is what Iron Man would look like in the real world today. And to a greater or lesser degree, they've stuck with that. Thor was much more fantastic in both the movies, particularly the second Thor movie, but at least they tried to explain it, right? The laws of reality as we know them have been suspended, so they explained some things. But this one was just all out. It was a comic book. You could see Jack Kirby, penciling in a line while Stan Lee says, "I don't know, make him green." So yeah, actually, Seth, I now think it's a 9. It's an 8.5 or 9, but if you look at it that way.
Yay! I want a debate. Mark it down, internet.
No kidding.
Of course, you have to admit that you've got to give a lot to get there. But yeah. It is a comic book on film. That's a good review.
Interesting.
So
I still want to watch it. So okay.
Yeah, and you should watch it. Even though I only gave it a 7, there's lots of movies that are worth watching that are 7s. I mean, it's a good movie.
Plenty of the bad movies are even 7s.
Right. I mean, one of my favorite of all time movies is the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and it barely warrants like a 6.5 if you're talking about pure movies. But it was so much fun that it's one of my favorite movies of all times. So a 7 doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad movie.
But you have to admit, part of what made that movie great was the movie it followed up. So Temple of Doom used to be the low point in that franchise.
Yeah, and then the Crystal Skull. Oh.
Whatever. I heard they were thinking of making a movie. So
somebody accused me online today of being a prequel lover, referring to Star Wars, and I was like, "You clearly have no idea who you're talking to, do you?" To even insinuate
never
that.
have talked to you about it.
Yeah. Anyway, moving right along. That's all we've got. We don't have any feedback from the audience. Shame on you guys. We have nothing. And we'll get to some tech news if we have a chance to talk about it. But first, let's jump into the whole concept of whose job is it anyway? And I'm looking. I think this will be interesting. We have such a global audience. We have people from many different countries and many different cultures who listen to the show. And I'm interested to hear your feedback on this. This is a very Amerocentric, as much of our stuff is. We don't. I'm not ashamed of the fact that I'm an American and everything I do is American, and this is a Amerocentric show. But I don't also always agree with everything that is the way the Americans think, and it is true that by and large, a large percentage of the country have bought into this notion that there are American jobs and there are not American jobs. And
right.
When I got to looking at some of these things, one of my personal favorites here was there's a company, Abbott, that's just the name of the company, Abbott, is laying off a bunch of IT people. Actually, their contractor, they're going with a different contractor, is the long and short of it. But it looks like the going with a different company is in the form of laying people off. But you're not really laying people off. You're just, because they weren't your people. They were already contractors. Anyway, Abbott
Right.
Labs is a global healthcare company, and they're based in Indiana, I believe it is. And Senator Dick Durbin said of the move that it was, quote, this is a quote, that the move was harsh and insensitive. I'm just going to let that sink in for a little bit. A company decided to do what was in its best financial interest, and it was referred to as harsh and insensitive.
Does that mean did they come in and like throw poo all over the contractors as they were leaving, or?
Well, it's worse than that. They actually had to train their replacements. So they brought in the new guys. The old guys trained the new guys. Then the old guys got fired. But they knew they were getting fired at the time. So we're firing you, but before you go, train these new guys.
Yeah, if you want your severance, you have to train the new guys.
Right. So could you call that insensitive? Okay, I'll give you that. So what? Is there a mandate on the part of a corporate entity or any business owner, any hirer, anybody who employs somebody, employer, that's the word.
Right.
Does an employer have to be sensitive?
Since when is business ever sensitive?
Well, if your business is, touchy-feely, I guess. But
Well, okay. If the job is, rubbing someone's shoulders for a living, then yeah, you need to be touchy-feely. But since when is, IT world touchy-feely?
Well,
It's never.
here's the way that it is insensitive. And whether you think it's insensitive overall, I think you can agree that at least in this particular way it is. This is a company doing business in America that had American citizens working for it, and you can take out the intermediary. Oh, but they're not our employees; they're a contractor. That's just legal fiction. They're your employees because they're doing your job, whether you third party them or not. So, and we're replacing those with foreign workers who we're bringing in, and we're paying them less money because they're not Americans. So we're cratering the American economy, putting downward pressure on the wages by bringing in these foreign people, and then we're putting American people out of work. So in that particular way, that's insensitive. Now, the bigger issue is you have, America has like the highest corporate taxes in the world, or up among them, and the government provides incentives to bring these foreign workers over to America. So you can't really be mad at this company because it's doing things to maximize its profit. From that sense, I don't have a problem with the company doing things to maximize its profit. I have a problem with the system set up to screw the people it governs. And, we've talked before that big companies are some of the most anti-capitalistic people there are because they pay for the lobbyists and they own the lawmakers, so they write the laws so they can stay on top. And this is the way they stay on top. They, hey, let's bring these foreign workers in. We'll give the companies credit for hiring these foreign workers, and the companies make more money because they can pay the foreign workers less money to do the exact same job.
So here's what I find interesting about that. Let me interject there. I'm not going to dispute anything you say, but what I find interesting about that is these foreign workers, as you dub them, they're foreign nationals, but they're working in our country, living in our country, buying the same groceries, living in the same streets. Why are they willing to work for less? Clearly, it can be done. So Americans could work for less. They're just unwilling to. Right? If they had gone to these people and said, you could keep your job, but we're going to cut your salary to the point that these foreign nationals will work. Would that have flown? Would that have been insensitive? Probably. But the point is, this is not overseas outsourcing. The Indian call center has become so commonplace that it's actually a joke now, and that's because it's become easy to do. Jamaica is a new recent hotspot for call centers. You look for a place where the economy is such that $8 an hour seems like $1 million, and has a good IT infrastructure, and where they speak English natively. And so there's a lot of places where you can do that. India was one of the first places to get started. Other places, you these people, they are clearly not Americans, but they're doing call support for, if you do Dell tech support, you're not going to get somebody in America. It's very unlikely that you're going to get somebody in America.
Consumer, enterprise, you still do.
Okay. So having said that, that's outsourcing. Okay. That is losing an American job. You're not putting an American out of work. You're just taking a job that would have been an American job and moving it overseas. So that's one thing. I just want to define our terms. The other one is putting Americans out of work, which is what this is. You are bringing in a foreign national and using American, in this case, to say an American citizen, either natural or naturalized. A citizen of our country is being displaced by a foreign national who is sitting in the same chair, living presumably in the same city, driving the same roads, buying food at the same grocery stores, buying electricity from the same electric company, buying gas from the same gas stations. These are not the economy as a whole does not see a negative here. In fact, it's a positive. You're importing consumers. So why is it that these foreign nationals will work for half the amount of money?
That is a good question. And, greed is not confined to the rich. That, greed is not the luxury of the rich. From the poorest person to the richest person, greed infects us all. So there isn't a good answer to your question other than the greed of the company and the greed of the individual. And part of it goes to, these are not, flipping burgers at McDonald's. These are jobs that you have to put effort to learn the skills. And whether that effort is getting a loan to go to a college or trade school or some type of education, or teaching yourself, by consulting books and videos and online materials, you have to put a lot of effort to get these jobs. And so, because you're doing it in this country, it costs us more to learn the skills than it does in other places. But then we're undercut. So we've invested all this money in our future, and now we're finding I could make the same working at McDonald's. So why bother going out and getting a high-tech education when I'm not going to be able to get a job doing it, because foreign nationals are brought in and they're preferred because not only do they work less, the company gets tax breaks for bringing them in that they don't get tax breaks if they hire a native citizen. So that's the other side of it.
So, okay, I'm not sure that I can even talk about the tax breaks part. Maybe yes, there is some incentive. These H-1B visas are the general ones. It's if you're a skilled person, and your job is in demand, then you can get a special visa to be a guest worker. Go ahead, Seth.
Well, and that's the thing. If you're having to lay off somebody who is doing the job, then how in demand is it? So there's the H-1B visa program, but technically, do they even qualify if they're displacing someone who currently does the job? It's one thing if there's nobody who can do this job, and it's another thing to say we can save some money bringing these people in.
Well, okay, let's just address that right there. What is the responsibility of a business? Is it to have American jobs? And I don't know that there's a right answer to this, but this is sort of the nature of what we're talking about. Is the responsibility of a corporate entity to make the surrounding environments, the culture around it better, or is it to maximize profit? I could hear an argument either way. What do you think?
Okay, it is to maximize profit, but to maximize profit in the short term as well as the long term. If you destroy your consumer base, then great, you saved a few dollars this quarter, but next quarter, in a couple of years, your profits are going to go way down because the market won't support the rate you currently have now. So it's one of those short-term, long-term thinkings. I don't know. I'm just throwing out stuff here.
No, I got
what do you think about that,
Chris? Same question. In general broad strokes, what is the primary responsibility of a business? Oh, you're muted. We're not hearing you. All right. So while Chris works that out, I will say, what for example, I own a company. Right now, you are listening to me on a product produced by Element OP Productions. It's the beginning of every show, and that's a question I had to ask myself when forming this company. In this case, it's just a DBA. It's me doing business as a name, but the same would be true if it was an LLC or a full-on corporation. Especially if you're a corporation, one of the required documents is some sort of business plan or scope or what's the word I'm looking for? I'm blanking on it. Anyway,
mission statement.
Mission statement. Thank you. So what I have decided is the primary responsibility of Element OP Productions is to entertain and educate the audience. So my primary goal is to serve the audience. Maximizing profit must come secondary to that, and then doing good. Yeah, doing the right thing, doing good, making the world a better place is under maximizing profit only as much as it supports, sort of Asimov's 3 laws. Rule number 1, serve the audience. Rule number 2, maximize profit. We're good. We hear you, Chris. Rule number 2, maximize profit as long as it doesn't interfere with rule number 1. Rule number 3, do the best good that you can to the culture around you as long as it doesn't interfere with rules number 1 or 2. So that's kind of the way I run my one-person company. So in my case, maximizing profit would become before making the world a better place. Unless you put it in terms of serving your customers, you could say that making the world a better place is part of serving your customers. So there's some circular thinking there, and each corporate entity, each person, and each individual has to wrestle with that on a regular basis. When you have corporate business meetings, we have board meetings. These are the sort of things that they talk about. What is not at any part of that is Dick Durbin's harsh and insensitive. Not at any point did I say that you have to be mild and sensitive. And I don't think that Apple is, I went on, on the record just last week saying that I don't buy Apple products because I don't want to be an Apple customer because I don't like the way they treat their customers. But it's not their job to make me feel good. It's their job to liberate me from my money. And if making me feel good isn't part of that, and it hasn't been, Apple has not traded on the feel good. They've actually traded on elitism for decades now. Make you feel good because you think you're better than those around you. That's a corporate strategy, and it works for them. It's going to work in the short term anyway. So that's back to your point about short term versus long term. All right, so Chris, now that you're back, what do you think the primary role of a company is, or a business?
Well, that depends greatly upon what type of business they are. If they are a customer-facing company, then I would say they need to be a customer-centric. The long run is making sure the customer is happy. A service industry. But if your business is one that is back-end business, you don't have any front-end customer level, then it's to maximize profits.
So let's look at an example that is often touted it's certainly in social media, if not regular media. Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A, for reasons of the belief system of the owners, is not open on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
That is not serving their customers. That is 1/7 of the week where they are choosing not to serve their customers.
Right.
And many people I know, Chick-fil-A is huge here in Atlanta. Many people I know would eat lunch after church every Sunday at Chick-fil-A if it were open. Mm-hmm. So Chick-fil-A has chosen to serve their own principles, or in the way they look at it, serve their employees over their customers 1/7 of the week. That's a choice they made. And they are frequently blasted for choosing to stand on those sorts of principles. But and I guess people probably call them harsh and insensitive as well. But then the question is, who gets to decide that? I guess my point is the owners of the company and the customers. Mm-hmm. That's a decision that they make among themselves.
Okay, but by not being open on Sunday and honoring their customers' religious beliefs, that is serving their customer.
Except the customers who are atheists and just want waffle fries on Sunday. They're not serving that customer. They're serving the customers who think the same as the owner, and excluding the others. Oh, exclusion! American businesses can't be exclusionary.
But sure they can, because it's the way that everything works. We make our own rules over in America.
I mean, Target decided they were going to be inclusive, and there's been a huge backlash about it. I doubt they've lost any money over it, but they've certainly lost some media face by saying that they were going to put in transgender bathrooms. My wife asked me what I thought about that. A current event, okay, not really related to this. President Obama essentially issued a decree to all public schools in the country last week that said you must make arrangements for transgender students. I don't know that he specifically talked about restrooms, but he just said you must have a plan to be inclusive of transgender students, and if you're not, we'll cut federal funding, like for example the school lunch program, things like that. That's a super simplification of it. And there's been uproar about it, certainly on social media. And my wife asked me, what do you think about it? And I said, well, I think it's much ado about nothing. Every portable potty anywhere in the country has been transgender available. Every restroom marked as a family restroom. You know what? My bathrooms in my house support both genders. I know. I'm forward thinking like that. I don't have a men's room and a ladies' room in my house.
How dare you, Mark?
They're gender non-specific bathrooms. And so people were just going crazy because Target wants to have gender non-specific bathrooms. Every construction site on the planet has gender non-specific bathrooms. Get over it.
I mean, it's just one of those things where it's, how can people be that blind? I mean, we've been gender non forever.
Well, the difference is, it's the difference between a one-hole and a two-holer, right? Anytime there's a multiple people in the bathroom at the same time, they've been divided down genders. Except for family restrooms, which are all over the place. When I go to my local Home Depot, there's a multi-stall family bathroom in there, which it is understood that guys can take their daughters in there, and women can take their sons in there, and that's what that's for. That's a family bathroom where gender lines don't fit. And so they've been around for a long time, but suddenly, because somebody who dresses differently, or somebody who was born differently and has different anatomy now due to surgery might use one of those, people are confusing transgender and transvestite. That's one of the biggest thing, is they're assuming every transvestite, every man who likes to wear women's clothing is immediately a pervert. And okay, if that's your belief, if you believe that is a perverted behavior, that comes from a moral perversion, and a man would not wear women's clothes, and were he not a perverted individual, then I get your point. But just let him go to the gender non-specific bathroom and get on with your life.
Okay, but what happens when there's only one bathroom marked males and one bathroom marked female, and there is no family bathroom?
Well, there's the thing, but
that
the thing
is the question.
But Target, their whole point was, we're going to install gender non-specific bathrooms. That was their whole thing. We're going to make it available.
Well, their whole thing was, we no longer have a men's bathroom and a women's bathroom.
Yeah, all bathrooms are now gender non-specific, which is, it's the same thing, right? You've just basically labeled all your restrooms as family restrooms. If they'd said that, I probably would have been applauded for it instead of vilified.
Well, and if they make it so that only one family can go in there at a time, then I wouldn't have a problem with it.
So how do you say that? Is my,
I mean, so okay.
You're Uncle Seth when you come to my house. Are you part of my family or not?
Well, but here's the deal. I'm not married, but say I have a 6 or 7 year old girl. She goes into what used to be the women's restroom, and this guy says, I identify as a girl now, so this 25-year-old man follows her into the restroom.
So you follow the 25-year-old man and guard your 6-year-old niece.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to. I don't want to go in the women's bathroom. That's the thing. So, I can understand, if they're going to say, no more communal restrooms, everything is single thing, okay, fine. But what about the ones, then they need to make an exemption for the communal ones that are already there. So that to me, that's the issue.
All right. I didn't mean to take us down that rabbit hole, but the argument seems to be entirely about pre-op transsexuals or transvestites. And that's the thing. The actual Bruce Jenners of the world, the actual post-op transgenders.
He's not post.
Well, okay. We'll say that he is, because he's the most famous person I can think of. So, okay, well, maybe Bruce Jenner now, because he is a pre-op transsexual, right? Where do you think he should go? It's not Target's business where he should go. It is the business of, me as my parent. Whether I want Bruce Jenner in the same bathroom as my kids, that's my job. And I get that. I understand all these points, but I also understand that you're setting up an onus of patrolling these things. Target now has to have gender specific potty patrols. an employee who stands at the bathroom and does a DNA test. Were you born male or female before you can go in there? And so they thought that the smarter thing to do would just be say, we're just not going to have any gender assignments at all. And their customers told them that was wrong. To get back to our point, the customers, in this case, are sort of driving the bus. But to go back to Abbott Labs, their customers don't care. I don't know Abbott Labs. I'm not one of their customers, but I would assume that 90+% of their customers don't care whether their tech support is handled by a foreign national or a naturalized American citizen or a natural American citizen, as long as they get good quality tech support. So
I almost bet that's the end goal anyway. Is does my problem get fixed?
And Abbott Labs, that's their question too. My problem is I'm spending too much on tech support for the reasons that Seth said, so eloquently, that it's expensive to gain the skills necessary to have some of these jobs. And so people are wanting a return on that investment. I get that. The checkers at McDonald's are also wanting a return on their investment, and that's not happening. So there's you can want it, and then there's things you can get, and they don't necessarily go together. So what's happening is the IT workers, making them train their replacements, that's a little low class. I get that. But it's also the most effective way to do it. Who knows the job better than the person leaving it?
But in that instance, though, wouldn't you, if you were the CEO or the CTO or whatever you want to call them, the person pushing for the people they're firing to hire, to train the people coming in, wouldn't you worry about them mistraining?
Nope. You're worried about the bonus you get because you slashed the IT budget by 25%. So therefore, that frees up more money for your bonus. The disconnect between the C-level and the rest of the company seems to get wider and wider every day. So there isn't the loyalty, there's no loyalty from the individual worker to the company because the company has no loyalty to the individual worker. So since there's no loyalty, hey, we can find somebody and cut costs. Let's do that.
So let's tackle that dummy a little bit. So loyalty is a thing. Absolutely. It used to be you went to work at the company your dad went to work for, and he worked there for 40 years, and he got you on in the mailroom, and you were going to work there for 40 years and retire. You stood by your company stood by you. That doesn't exist in our country anymore. It is very rare. It's the exception and certainly not the rule. Is it the pursuit of profits that changed that, or the pursuit of higher wages, or both? I mean, something changed that equation. If we could go back to that, then or just going forward, going back and looking at that time, in that case, profit often took a back seat to what was best for my employees. Again, going back to Chick-fil-A, they feel that it's best for their employees to let their employees have Sundays with their family, whether they're Christians or not. They think that giving their employees one day to spend with their families is best for their employees, and so they're willing to take the financial hit of losing 1/7 of the revenue they could have by actually probably more, because people tend to eat out more on weekends, by closing the stores and letting their employees have that day with their family. When they first opened Chick-fil-A in like 1930ish, that was common thought. Now it's uncommon, and so they're being called out for being uncommon when they're really just throwbacks. So if Abbott Labs maintained this sort of loyalty to their employees, my question is, would their employees reciprocate that? What do you think, Chris?
I would say, yeah. You are who you are around. The whole idea that birds of a feather flock. I've seen in not just my work experience at the different places I've worked at, but the places that have loyal and helpful management have loyal and thoughtful employees. When you come to a place that has crappy and backbiting management, you have crappy and backbiting employees. It's one of those, it's the monkey see, monkey do, or in this case, it's the monkey trained, monkey do. So it goes on the line of what you see is what you're going to portray, and so if you're portraying nasty backbiting, that's what you're going to get back.
Seth, what do you think? Would loyalty on the part of the employer engender loyalty on the part of the employee?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, it's one of those, you can't say it would be a one for one thing, but the more loyal the company is, the more loyal the employee is. Has a general rule. Yes.
I don't think so. I think that Abbott Labs in this case would be, cutting their own profits without any gain, because we've created this culture, whether it's good or bad. I think that the horse is out of the barn at this point.
Well, yeah, they left.
We've created this culture in which, particularly in IT and certainly in like middle management IT, you're expected to jump from one company to another. In fact, if you have a resume that shows, several years, a decade of one company, that's actually negative in IT and certainly in middle management circles, in my experience. So we've created this culture, and we could argue about how it got created. Was it the me generation? Was it the baby boomers always looking for the next job for more money? Was it the greed of the corporations always undercutting people? I don't know, but I think that's gone now, and it would take a generation to get it back. So Abbott Labs and Disney was another thing that was mentioned in this Computer Ward article, that they would have to take a hit for a generation before they could see a return on that investment.
But would that return be worth it? That would be the question. I think it would. If you're wanting to change your paradigm to make a better place for your employees and your customers, then you take that hit.
But you've got to get. I could do that as a sole proprietor. But if you've got a board of directors and stockholders and Wall Street investors, and if you've got all those people that you've got to convince, that's a much harder sale to make.
Yeah, but it's one of those things. That's teaching the culture. If you want a good culture for your employees and your customers, then you have to take that hit.
Ben and Jerry's.
I have a feeling that this company is never going to get out from underneath this. They're going to constantly have. They're going to shortchange their employees, and they're going to constantly have this constant revolving door, and they're never going to get the level of expectations going to keep coming down, and they're never going to get to that pristine level of support again.
That's an excellent point. That your short-term contract workers will be cycling out, and you'll have a churn there, and you won't be able to grow managers up because these people are on temporary work visas, and you won't be able to grow your managers from within. That's an excellent point. Seth, what do you think?
No, I totally agree with that. We're not talking about the difference between profitability and destruction because you had losses. We're talking about the difference between profitable and wringing every last possible cent there is to get out of the business. And again, it's easy because I'm not the CEO. My bonus doesn't depend on, how many people did I get fired? What's our stock ticker move up this week? All that kind of crap. So it's easy for me to say that there's a level of profit that is enough. And after that, you build the culture to make sure that level of profit stays, not just in the near term, but in the long term, versus wringing every cent you can today, and then what else can we cannibalize tomorrow for next quarter's profit?
And that's why I think this is the heart of the matter is, and I don't know how to fix it other than to say take away any of those bonuses that would reward people for damaging the company long term.
We've had.
I started to say earlier, Ben and Jerry's tried this a while back. They are Ben and Jerry, the owners of that company, are admitted socialists, and they had this manifesto that their highest paid employee would not make more than, I'm going to make up a number, 20 times their lowest paid employee. And that lasted for a while until they found out they could not find a good CEO to work for $100,000 a year. They just couldn't. And they broke that, and they had to go back. And so now they've revamped their structure. And these high-minded ideals sound like a good idea. And I'll speak. I'll call out a company that I haven't worked for them, but I know people who have. Ocean Spray. The people that sell you your cranberry juice has very loyal employees, and they're good to their employees. But the list of those, in my experience, is much smaller than the list of churn. And the question is, which do you want to be? And I honestly, I don't know that I have an answer to that. I would like to think that my company, were it to grow to tens of hundreds of thousands of employees, that we would be good to our employees, and our employees would then be good to us. Henry Ford, when he first instituted the $5 a day, which was about 3 times what anybody else was paying, he said that if he starts paying his employees $5 a day, even the lowly guy who sweeps the floor is going to start sweeping his floor better. And instead of sweeping the tools out in the dust pile, he'll take the time to pick them up and put them back in the bin and save $5 every day just by doing his job better. That was Henry Ford's mentality. And to some degree, he was proven right. He also brought the whole industry up. He's credited with the 40-hour work week. Before then, it was 10 to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. 80 to 90 was common. He gave his employees 8-hour days, 5 days a week, gave them the weekends off, and paid them well. And he could do that because he was the big leader in the industry, and he caused the whole other industry and essentially the entire society to raise up. Who's going to do that now? Who's in the position to be able to do that now? Could Microsoft do that with their billions? Could Apple do that with their billions? Is anybody in a position now to do the equivalent of the $5 a day? Ben and Jerry's tried. They couldn't do it.
The problem boils down to the ugly green monster of greed. The constant fact that people are trying to, more money, more money, more money, and damned if anything else is any more important than money. There are a few companies that are better than that, and I don't know if there's any in the tech world. Supposedly Google is very good to their employees, but they still see turnover where, some headhunter comes by and says, "Hey, here's an extra 20% to your check. Come over and work for so and so."
Massive churn at Google, yes.
Yeah, but you see, you read studies and you see the supposed work areas that they have at Google, and man, I would give my left arm to work at a place like that, where they have good work or good health care for right there in the building. So you can, you're working more for them, but you're also getting being taken care of. Daycare on site. How many places offer daycare on site? None that I know of, unless you work at a daycare.
We even had to pay then. It was a discount. We had to pay.
Yeah. See, but my point is still valid. You don't see that type of company anymore. And and I think that's what's wrong in the United States right now, is the fact that we don't have companies that are looking at their employees as investments. They're looking at the employees as a cost.
Well, and it goes back to how many of the people who show up to work at that place are employed directly by that company. How many of them are contractors outsourced to something else? So that way, Abbott first said, "Oh, we're only hiring 3 people who aren't, it's our IT, it's our service provider." Well, the service provider is doing that because you told them to, but you get to insulate yourself from those decisions because we're not paying them, we've outsourced it. Well, when you've outsourced it, all you've done is created another layer of bureaucracy that the end worker who actually does the job now can't make as much as if you hired them directly, because you have to have your managers, and then the company you outsource them to has to have their managers. So yes, you get the work done for a lower rate of pay, but you've created bureaucracy that didn't need to be there. So that's, for back in the day, I tried to work at Microsoft, but Microsoft didn't hire anybody directly. Everybody was on temp contracts. And so if you ever could get on with Microsoft, you were set. But nobody could get on with Microsoft. They worked through a temp agency there. And so Microsoft has, they pay their employees great. Well, great, because the problem was most of the people working there weren't Microsoft employees. So, Microsoft can say, "Oh, well, our average salary is blah, blah, blah," but you don't see our contractor's average salary is 1/3 that, and that's just a random number. So, it gets into the thing. We throw these things in there to insulate it, and all it means is the end worker doesn't make as much as they did before. And I'm looking for a job now, so I'm a little passionate about this.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. So people tend to change their mindset when they go from employee to employer. It's a well-known fact that college students are liberal and business owners are conservative, and often those business owners were liberal Democrats or liberal college students when they became conservative business owners. I threw Democrat in there. Sorry, Pavlovian response. The the point there is that it's appropriate to change your thinking as you understand things better. Interestingly enough, we don't allow our political candidates that. If you have changed your thinking from what it was 20 years ago, you're a flip-flopper. You're not wise.
Right.
You're a flip-flopper. I have changed my opinion about many things that I had when I was 25 years old, and that's to the good, I assure you. But anyway, my next question I had about this was, where do we as a whole, as the culture, as the country, in this case, I don't think it was the Abbott one, but the Disney one, there was actually a Senate investigation. Your tax dollars at work. A Senate investigation about laying off IT workers. Is that appropriate? Do we as the American people and our representatives, using that word in the literal sense, our representatives, do they have a charter to be making sure that our companies are sensitive and mild rather than harsh and insensitive? Seth?
To make sure they're sensitive and mild, no, but to make sure that their citizens, their constituencies, aren't being bleeped over by their employers, yes.
Okay. So
now,
wait, let me
case? I don't know.
Let me give you the chance to refine your terms there. Are we talking about ensuring that no illegal activity has taken place, or ensuring that no unpleasant activity has taken place?
It gets, I would say, not illegal, because a lot of stuff that is legal isn't right. And laws are created, and there's the unintended consequences of the law that was created, and we've talked about this in General Way before. So if a company not breaking any laws but using every legal loophole that exists can get away with shafting its employees, then I think the government has a responsibility to step in and say, you can't shaft our citizens in this way, and close them. So was the investigation necessary? I don't know, because I didn't really read to see what the investigation was and what the findings were. So in the abstract, yes, investigations by the elected officials are really what they're there for. In the specifics, I don't know the specifics.
So you're talking about refining the laws. If we find that there were unintended consequences of the law, that you're following the letter of the law but not the spirit of the law, that the government's job is to refine those laws. Have I restated your position accurately?
Correct. And and the purpose of the H-1B is to bring over people for jobs there's a shortage of. Well, I would hypothesize or posit that if you have to fire someone to make room for the H-1B visa holder, then technically there isn't a shortage and they shouldn't have been brought over.
Chris, your thoughts?
I'm pretty close to Seth on that, but the question then comes into, if you're looking at filling a position with a H-1B1, you're having to pay for them to come across. Has the company paid the same due diligence to moving somebody from, say, the East Coast to the West Coast? You know what I'm saying? Have they exhausted the search?
Well, I'm sure that some math was done, and they decided it was cheaper to get people from India than from Indiana. I'm quite certain that math was done.
Right, but should that be? Should that be the line that we say, okay, we found a guy, but he lives in Timbuktu. It would cost us $20,000 that first year to get him here, just for moving costs, to move him over. But yet it's $15,000 to get an H-1B1.
But again, you don't need the H-1B1 because there's people already doing the job.
Right. No, I'm saying like they're adding job. They're adding a job for IT.
So, Seth, as I understand your objection here, they have violated the spirit of the law by using legal processes to maximize their profit, rather than following the spirit of the law in that using the legal processes to maximize opportunity. So, rather than maximizing opportunity, they've maximized profit, and that's your problem with it.
Correct.
Okay.
If they were opening up a new division, and then you can make the argument, and to me that's a different argument. Do I want to pay this person X at a new job when I can bring over this person for Y? That to me is a different equation than do I want to keep this person when I can bring in X person for Y?
Do you feel the same about outsourcing call centers to Jamaica?
I do. I understand why the businesses do it, and I understand it's not illegal. But if they want to sell to American company, if they're an American company and they pay taxes and they get grants and everything from the government, then I think they is it a legal requirement? No, but I think they have a duty to provide job opportunity to their customers. And unfortunately, people at the consumer level don't care, because the software that's supported by the Jamaican call center costs half as much as the software supported by the American call center, because the Americans want more money. I understand that, and so I understand. I don't like it. I hate globalization. So,
all right. So, pulling the thread a little farther, outsourcing manufacturing to China, same rules apply?
I understand why they do it. I don't like it. So, but at the same time, I don't check to see where my stuff is made. I check for the price tag. So I'm part of the problem with that one.
Chris, your thoughts?
I understand.
It's, a lot of times when we go down these stories, it's amazing how much we all parallel in thought. I'm also one that I don't really pay attention to where things are made or where the support's coming from. But I do know that if I see a place, if, say, my Motorola phone, which is not U.S. made, but U.S. sold, I can't fight the idea that I would love to buy a phone that's U.S. made from U.S. money for U.S. jobs, but anymore there's such a demand on our finances because of our keeping up with the Joneses mentality that it's amazing the sacrifices that people are willing to make, which is the same sacrifice that a business is making to keep up with their profit margins to make themselves look good for the stakeholders.
So you have come full circle back to my initial point that these H-1B workers are willing to work for less, able to work for less, in the exact same environment, in the same city, in the same grocery stores, on the same streets, paying the same gas. And so you nailed it. This is an issue of not American exceptionalism, but American privilege. We believe that because we were born here, we have a birthright of having certain things. And those certain things that have changed. Today, the American birthright is broadband internet and a mobile phone, a smartphone. That is because I'm an American, I deserve those things. These H-1B foreign nationals don't have that same American birthright. They don't feel entitled to living, having their kids in separate bedrooms. They're okay with having their kids stacked up 4 to a room. So they're living the life that we could be living, but we choose not to. And so we're right back to that same old saw that's been going around for forever. These dang Mexicans coming in are taking the jobs that Americans won't do. So these are decades-old arguments that have just now started to hit the high-tech industry.
Well, a part of what makes it a problem is one of the ways that in history, and it doesn't work anymore, in history, the way you protected local jobs was you placed taxes on things that came from other countries, and that's how your government got a large portion of its income was off of those tariffs. And then there would be tariff wars where, oh yeah, we're going to charge more, and there would be stuff like that. But if you eliminate those tariffs in the name of free trade, well then the people with the higher standard of living, their standard of living is going to fall, because it becomes then cheaper to bring in material, and whether that material is physical material or services from other countries, because there's no tariff on them, and person who makes $2 a day can do the exact same job as person who makes $20 an hour. Well, of course you're going to do the $2 a day route. So, but at the same time, the C-level executives of the company, they want to make more and more every year, but they don't want their employees to make more and more every year. They want their employees to make less. And to me, morally, you can't have it both ways. If you want your employees to make less, then you should have to be okay with making less too. But there's no corporate executive that's going to give themselves a pay cut to keep that ratio that used to exist between the foundation workers and the higher ups in the company.
And certainly no stockholder that's going to take a pay cut in the form of lower dividends.
Right.
That's a sale that you're not going to make.
No, I understand. I was born 100 years too late.
Now, but the question, we brought up the word entitled. Entitled is something that I hear a lot of when I talk to the older generations about people my age or younger, on how people are the entitlement mentality of people. It's the same problem. It's just a different wording for it, and it's just amazing that here it is again. We feel entitled to having a cell phone and broadband internet, but yet I know plenty of people that are skilled workers that are not working in jobs because it's beneath them to take that job. I must have been born under the right sun or the right star, because I remember scrubbing toilets, and I'd go back to it if it fed my family.
Yeah, I know more than one person who have been, quote, looking for a job for a decade. That's not possible. You cannot look for a job for a decade. You've either been out of work for a decade or you've been looking for a job. You can't do both.
Well, and part of the problem is, okay, my last job, I was making $60,000 a year. If I take a job making $10 an hour for 6 months, I go to another job, they're going to say, how much did you make at your last job? $10 an hour. Well, we'll pay you 12. Versus, once you drop in what you make, if you put that on your resume and explain that, to fill in a time gap, then it's not gonna be a short little dip in your earnings chart. You have fallen, and you have to slowly build your way up over time. So that's, unfortunately, right, wrong, or indifferent, that's the nature of employment, is how much did you make at your last job, we'll beat it by 10%. So
in that case, it's perfectly okay to tell them the job that was in the same industry.
Yeah.
When I'm doing resumes, I don't put that I was a grocery clerk at DSC Kingsaver in Greenville, Texas. It's not relevant.
No, but if I go for a tech job paying $12 an hour and look for another job, then they're not going to pay me $60,000 that I was making at the previous one.
Well, that all depends on the corporate policy. It's some corporations pay what the job is worth, regardless of who takes it.
Right.
I am fortunate that was the mentality of my current employer. We pay what the job is worth. It doesn't matter what you made before, because I would have been stuck in that same boat. I get it, and that's true. That is a true statement. Everything you said is true, but it's also not universal. It's just harder.
Yeah, and that also, I think, comes down to the difference. No offense, Seth, but you're single. You don't have kids, so that mentality works better for you. But if I were to lose my tech job tomorrow and was told, sorry, Charlie, hey, we can't afford your wage, I know plenty of jobs in town that I could go scrub toilets or, turn a monkey wrench, change a tire, and I'd still take those jobs in a heartbeat because it would put food on my family's table.
Oh yeah, I'm still living off my savings, so I'm not desperate yet.
Good on you for having savings.
Yeah.
When I get desperate, things will change. But getting back to the article, had this company placed an ad in Mumbai Times or whatever and paid for the expense to bring these people over, I would have much less of a problem than they are exploiting the government and getting the credits for this program the government has put in place and using. I'm not even saying they're doing anything illegal. but doing things outside the intent of the law, getting the benefits of being a corporate citizen of the United States while dissing on the physical citizens of the United States. To me, that's my major problem with what happened.
And would you feel the same if this were a Chinese company or an Iranian company? Is it the fact that you're an American that bothers you, or is it the practice that bothers you?
It is. I don't want. What are you asking me? Restate your
If
question.
you read this same article about a Chinese company importing Lebanese workers, would it raise your ire the same?
If they were using a government program to then turn around and displace those citizens, I wouldn't feel as passionately about it because it doesn't affect me so much, but I would have the same stance I have in this one.
Okay.
Versus just they didn't go out and say, hey, we're going to hire you to come in. We're going to use this program so we can make money hiring you and firing the people who are here.
I'm much more libertarian about this, and that I think that what they're doing is fine. It's legal, and it's appropriate for maximizing their profit. Does that make them good people? No. And much like in the way that my response to Apple, I don't want to be associated with that company. I might choose to not be associated with Abbott Labs. I might choose, if I were a customer of theirs and this article came out, there's a good chance I would change my service provider, my consultancy, if I could. I feel that way as a consumer, but in terms of as my role as an American citizen, to have my representatives investigating them, I just don't feel that that's right and appropriate use of resources.
Okay, but again, this isn't libertarian because they're exploiting a program that they're using direct government involvement. So
they're working the laws that as they are written. That's not wrong. It may be sleazy, but they're obeying the laws. They're following the letter of the law, and they're making the maximum use of their available resources.
Right, but this is not free market and it's not non-intervention. And I don't say they should be fined for this because they haven't broken the law, but this is a case where there should be an investigation and the law should change so it doesn't happen again.
Okay, so I actually support that premise. Change the law because we don't agree with the intended consequences of the law, unintended consequences. But don't stop the company from doing the practice. So there's where my libertarianism kicks in. They're doing something that is right, whether or not I agree with it. It is legal. I won't use the word right. They're doing something that is legal. If you want to change the law, great, but don't mess with the company. And I feel that way about so many things. If you don't like the law, change the law. There's a process for that. We in America have an amazingly robust process for changing the law, all the way down to the Constitution. We could call a constitutional convention and ratify an entirely new constitution. We have that right. We could do that. But don't legislate by fiat. Don't legislate by judicial order, for example. Don't mess with things because you don't like them, even though they're legal. So, do I like what Abbott Labs is doing? No. Do I think they have a valid right to do it? Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's your stance, and that's one way to look at it. I mean, I think that I would have asked them to look at a better way of saving money than dumping their entire client or their customer, their tech force. There had to have been better ways to do that than starting over, in my opinion. But that's my thoughts there.
So really the only part about this whole article that bothered me was that the government was involved in it in any way. But Seth, I moderate that, because I will accept the premise that it is incumbent on our government to make sure that the laws that they've created are not causing unintended harm. So I stipulate that point.
Right. And so I have my internet outrage, so now I can ignore it from now on. I feel vented. I've got my hacktivism riled up, and but I haven't really done anything to change the situation. I'm the quintessential American now.
Yeah, and one thing I will point out, though, is if we have created, and this is a societal thing, this is not business, but if we've created a situation where the people who work in an area cannot afford to live in the area they work, we really need to reevaluate that as the culture. For example, I work 25 miles from where I live. I cannot afford to live closer because every 5 miles in you go, things go up $100,000. I made that up, but there is a metric there. The closer you get to the city center, and the businesses, for whatever their reasons are, they associate themselves in the city center, but they've created a scenario where their people can't live there. So the one of the reasons Abbott Labs is having this problem is that their current IT staff is not willing to work for less because they can't have the life that they want in that area. The people coming over from other countries are stepping up. What Americans would consider a step down are most likely a step up. And so that's something that we as a society, as a global society, because this is not an American problem, this is a global problem, this is a human problem, we need to re-examine as a global society. And my whole point of this, if I have one, is that globalization creates these problems. You and I, the three of us now, are spanning tens of thousands of miles between us and doing it in real time because technology has allowed that to happen. That same technology that allows that to happen allows a call center job to be outsourced to India,
right?
To span those tens of thousands of miles, and that's okay. So that's an interesting way to look at it. In that you're sort of being bitten by your own poison at this point. We've created a global economy. We got to stop looking at ourselves as Americans and start looking at ourselves as citizens of the global society. Wow, that was a super liberal thing to say, but it's also.
I thought you were libertarian, Mark.
I'm not isolationist.
Since when did you become a Democrat?
Yeah, I'm not isolationist. I never liked the Monroe Doctrine, but while the Monroe Doctrine had its place 200 years ago, it does not today at all, and we need to. Well, not 200. I added too many years there, but anyway, the point stands that we have to rethink the world that we're in, and I think we need to get over this concept of American jobs. They're just jobs, and whoever can do that job, whoever can get to it to do the job, whether it's digitally or physically, it's a job. It's not an American job. It's a job.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. Onward and up to the next one.
30-second recap, Seth. Anything else you'd like to say? Ready, go.
It is an American job.
Okay. Chris, 30-second recap. Go.
30-second recap. A job's a job, no matter what it is.
Okay. That's interesting, Seth. That you have that viewpoint. This is an American job. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just find that interesting. You're a product of your upbringing. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it were in India, it would be an Indian job. So.
Okay. This horse is fully dead and completely beaten, and it's time to move on. And we've discussed this so much, we don't have time to do any news. So I'm going to go straight into Seth. What happened this week in history?
Okay, speaking about government involvement, this week in history, May the 18th, 1998, the U.S. Justice Department files antitrust lawsuit against Microsoft. This was when Microsoft came out with Windows 98 and bundled their browser for free because it was so crappy they couldn't sell it or give it away. And the government sued them, saying you use your monopolistic hold on the operating system to do this. Because if you remember back in the day, in order to get a browser, you either had to download it via dial-up, which would take overnight, or you had to go to the store and pay. I think, if I remember correctly, Netscape was $79.95. $79.95 for a browser to see text, basically, on a web page.
Well, don't forget rotating under construction GIFs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what happened is the one that came with it won.
Mostly.
They flooded the market with inferior product. And so the government filed suit against them, and then the outcome was less than satisfactory for all parties concerned. Microsoft, Netscape, the end user, everybody lost, even the government lost. That happened this week in history.
I can't say it better. When the Justice Department files an antitrust lawsuit, there's only two outcomes: everybody wins or everybody loses. And in this case, everybody lost.
Yeah, and one thing they should have done with the outcome of this, they should have said, "We're sorry, IBM," because they did not hit Microsoft nearly as hard as they hit IBM. But anyway, okay, that happened this week in history.
All right, I'm clicking. I need to do a quick power recycle because I forgot to unplug my laptop. So hold on a second.
Sure.
All right, here we go. Yeah, so that's an example, Seth, of the government making sure that its laws are followed. And you can argue whether or not this was successful or not, but that was the U.S. Justice Department doing its job. Hey, this company's breaking our own laws. We need to fix it. And I'm not mad about that. I think it was dumb, but I think lots of things are dumb.
Won't disagree with that.
All right, this is the part of the show where I tell you how you can feed back to us. Do you think we're a bunch of blowhards? All right, be a little more specific. As I said earlier in the show, I'm interested to hear about non-Americans. When we talk about American jobs, how does that ring to a Swedish ear? What do you think when we talk about American jobs? When we talk about the global economy, how does that sound to a Kuwaiti ear? What do you think? Let me know what you think. I'm curious to hear about it. Was I completely wrong? The internet generally tends to think so. Let me know. Was Chris always right all the time? The internet generally tends to think so. Let us know. Go to 559 I am Opie and leave us a voicemail if you'd like to have your voice appear right here alongside us, or go to elementopie.com, click the contact us button at the top of the page, fill out the form. That's the fastest and easiest way to do it. You could also send an email to geekrant@elementopie.com. That goes to all three of us so that I can't censor Big Brother style the email that the other guys get.
You would never censor us, would you?
That's what you think, yes. I truly do hope that we get some response about this because I want to hear what you think. Good or bad, let me know. I have never been one to censor those who disagree with me. Often I put those people up front. If you disagree with me, you get top billing because that's the most interesting discussion. So let us know what you think. elementopie.com, use the contact us form. Now, having said all that, Seth, what do you have to lower my productivity so that you look like a better hiring option?
Okay, I think this one will really work. It is onlyinyourstate.com. You can go there and click on it, and they have lists and things and facts, things to see, things to do for every state in America, or in the United States. I'm sorry. Don't want to leave out the other Americas. But anyway, you can go there and see and just click on, like, looking at the first page, 13 little-known beaches in Oregon that'll make your summer unforgettable. Or in Wyoming, going into these 5 caves in Wyoming is like entering another world. So, when there's one for Texas, 7 more hole-in-the-wall restaurants in Texas that will blow your mind. Anyway, so, you can plan your vacation at work, and your boss can see it via the logs you go to, making you look like a bad hiring decision, paving the way for me to take your job.
I clicked in Georgia because that's my adopted home state. 13 things that are illegal in Georgia that you didn't know are illegal. 15 things you can only brag about if you're from Georgia. Where was another one? I forgot. I've already lost it. Anyway, 9 epic water parks in Georgia that'll take your summer to a whole new level. So if you're traveling, this is kind of interesting. It's a whole lot of clickbait, but it could be useful. Sometimes clickbait is actually useful.
I had to laugh. I went on of course, Montana, because that's where I'm from. And the very first one was learn to love the great outdoors. Number 2, learn to embrace a real, true winter. Number 2 is about winter. And then, like, there's a couple more down the roads about learn to drive in snow, learn to drive when it's dark. Yeah, it's funny.
10 reasons why everyone should live in Atlanta. I can give you 90 reasons you shouldn't, but let's hear what these 10 are to round it out to a nice 100. I could see spending some time on here, Seth, and with summer vacation season coming up, you may have just done us all a favor. Onlyinyourstate.com. Cool stuff. Check it out.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, something we've alluded to in the past, but haven't really given any details on. This is, if I'm doing my math right, we're going to do this show and 2 more shows this is the second to the last. So this week and 1 more. So we will release on the 18th of May, we'll release on the 25th of May, and then we will not record a new show until the middle of July. I am moving. I'm buying a house. I'm moving, and also I think we want to just make this a regular yearly hiatus. I think it does us all good to kind of get away and recharge the batteries a little bit. So we're going to take all of June off, which is 5 Wednesdays, and then probably the first Wednesday in July, because that's the whole 4th of July holiday. Hard to get together over that weekend thing. So that's 6 weeks that we're going to be away from these microphones. But fear not. You will not be without a show. We have already pre-recorded 3 things, and we're going to do 3 best ofs. We've each picked a show that we think is worth re-airing, and then we're going to do 3 entirely new content shows. But even the shows that we're re-airing, there is new content there. So it's not just a total rehash. We're talking, we're doing some new stuff, and then we're going into the old stuff. So here we go. Just to let you know that this is there will be 2 more live shows. And then we're going to take 6 weeks off, just to let you know. But you will not miss any content. Your feed will be updated every Wednesday throughout the year. But if you're not going to hear your feedback for a while if you don't get it in right away. So there's the little programming note I wanted to tell you about that. We're taking the summer off, but we're not taking the summer off. We won't be here, but you'll still hear us from the grave, from beyond the other side of the internet.
Bum, bum, bum.
So having said that, it's time for me to say that ends it for this episode of the GeekRant.
Bye.
Toodles.
Bye.
All right. YouTube people, you don't get the super advanced notice. We're going to record one of those extra shows right now, and you don't get to see it. Ha! I'm cutting you off. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Toodles.